Okay,
All
thank
right.
brilliant. Thank you. So I'll just share screen. So here we go. So, like I said, our webinar this evening is on how to teach social competence through play. And there are so many great opportunities through play, and we'll discuss some of them today. So, what do we mean by social competence? Well, it's one of the most important indicators for future success and happiness, and it includes being able to successfully manage our emotions, to understand our emotions, and to be able to communicate our needs and desires effectively. That's one aspect of it. Also, being able to form relationships with other people, to understand that other people might have needs and desires that might differ from our own. And that can be huge to navigate, particularly for children. And of course, also the ability to communicate our needs and desires effectively. There's a huge skill in that because we need the language, we need the understanding, we need a good vocabulary. So there's many aspects to being able to teach those communication skills to our children so they can actually express themselves and their needs. So our role as educators and parents is to provide a variety of experiences so that children can develop these skills. So we are, yes, we might call ourselves teachers, but as teachers, it's our job to facilitate learning. We don't directly teach, we provide opportunities for learning, and we are then the guide on the side supporting our children through the emotional journey of learning, essentially. So, what do we mean by managing our emotions when we look at those 3 points, 1, 2, and 3 here? Then we mean impulse control. You know how impulsive children can be, and some adults as well. And to be able to control the urges and the desire to jump in with enthusiasm is sometimes really challenging. So there are ways to intentionally teach that. Also, delayed gratification, understanding and knowing that you can't have everything you want in that moment immediately. Sometimes we have to wait, sometimes we have to take turns, allow others to go first, etc., etc. And the ability to resist temptation. It can be very tempting to go and touch something you've been told not to touch, or to do something you've been told not to do. So the ability to hold back and resist and think first is a real skill that takes some time to learn. So we'll look at how we intentionally teach that as well. And also, to manage our emotions, we first need to understand them, understand those huge, very strong feelings that we are having in that moment, and then being able to name them in order to manage them effectively. And there's been lots of research from neuroscientists on the actual the impact being able to name something has on being able to calm the emotion and help us to self-regulate. Just by giving it a label, it helps us hugely to manage it, which is really interesting. And also being empathetic towards others. If we can understand emotions for ourselves, we're more likely to understand the emotions of other people as well. But there are ways to intentionally teach that too. So the next step is looking at relationships with others. So it's really important to understand that we're all different and that other people might have opinions, needs, or desires that might differ from our own. And that can often link to conflict. So the next part of forming successful relationships with other people is being able to negotiate, being able to work through challenges and difficulties and manage conflict. So, because it's going to happen, it happens all the time in real life, and it's particularly challenging for young people, is to manage that. Fighting over the same toy is a perfect example of that. And it's interesting how, the grass is always greener, I guess. And when someone's engaged in play and they're really enjoying a particular resource, it seems to make it more appealing and more desirable to the child. So that can cause many challenges in the relationships between children. So it's really important we support them to navigate that, because we're giving them skills that will last for the rest of their lives. So it is a critical time to be teaching this. Um, Also on communication, being able to communicate our feelings, our needs, and our desires effectively, so that, there's lots of forms of communication, and you could argue that smacking someone in the face is a form of communication, but it's not effective, it's not desirable behavior. So we need to be able to teach our children to use either gestures or words to communicate their needs effectively, and to grow their emotional literacy as well. Like I mentioned before, to have a good vocabulary so you can actually use the right words to express the right emotion. And of course, I've got conflict resolution in there as well. Ideally, if we can communicate our needs effectively, then that in itself is a form of conflict resolution and negotiation too. They sit side by side, those two skills. So let's go through and look at why it's important. So why is social and emotional intelligence important? And it's because actually it improves our mental health and well-being. And there are proven links between people who have good social skills and high levels of emotional intelligence are more likely to achieve success in life, more likely to build successful reciprocal relationships with others, and be able to have long-term meaningful relationships with others as well. So it's important not just for success in your career, your business, and your life, but also in your relationships. So how do we teach social and emotional skills through play? Well, we teach them one of three ways. One is through intentional teaching strategies. So when we say that, it's about planning activities and experiences so that children can be in situations that require them to develop their social skills. The other is through free play, by setting up the environment for children to make choices about how they engage with that environment and who they engage with, as they make choices for themselves and play with and alongside other children. And of course, the third one is through naturally occurring opportunities for learning. And that, when I talk about that, I mean things like real life situations. So, things happen that naturally in life, like losing a pet, or having an upset over something, maybe having a meltdown because we've not been able to cope in a certain situation. All these things that happen in the daily life are fantastic opportunities for learning and for teaching. So we need to embrace them all. So free play, through a variety of play-based experiences, children can practice their social skills through different interactions and situations. So if we allow children to make choices about where they play, what they play with, who they play with, obviously within reasonable boundaries, then we are setting them up we're creating the perfect situation for children to practice their social skills, and to engage with other children in a way that is at their level and feels safe to them. And we'll go into that a little bit more in a second. But free play is a fantastic way, if it's set up for pro-social skills, is a great way for children to learn. And then looking at open-ended resources. Now, by open-ended, I mean things like these little counters on the image here. That's an open-ended resource. Children can use that. That can be anything they want it to be. It could be things like driftwood, shells, stones, there's a whole host of things that aren't coming to mind right now, but things that are open-ended, they're not made for a particular purpose. They can be used for anything. And the great thing about this is that through cooperative play, children can create their own games, they can make their own imaginary worlds, they can create games and scenarios either on their own or with other children where they're working out what the game is. You know, you be the dinosaur, I'll be the dog, and they're making up stories, they're making up narratives, they're communicating together, they're setting boundaries for their play. You know, we're not allowed to go past this line, or we'll create this barrier here, and that means we have to stay here. You'll hear it in their languaging that they're making social contracts with each other about what the game's going to look like. And if another child doesn't like that idea, then they'll come back and they'll negotiate. They'll say, well, no, we need to do it this way. And you'll see that to and froing where they're actually practicing their social skills with each other. Yes, sometimes it will result in conflict. Sometimes they might not be able to negotiate so effectively because that does take a lot of practice. And if that's the case, try not to jump in and rescue them, and try not to take over. Just, if you can, just sit back for a while and see if they can work through the problem themselves. And 9 times, well, maybe not 9 times out of 10, but for a large percentage of the time, children will work through it themselves and come up with their own solutions. If you do need to step in, then maybe step in with a question. So you're still putting the power and the problem solving responsibility on the children. So you could say, I can see you're struggling here to find a solution to this problem. What would happen if, or what do you think we should do, we could do with this idea or that idea? But leave it to them to make the decisions and to find a solution to the problem, because it's what they're learning there is that they have a sense of autonomy, they have a sense of control, and that, you know, if they negotiate and problem solve and they don't get their own way, it's not the end of the world, and actually the game can continue, and that's a huge payoff. That's a positive experience that will make them more likely to push through the discomfort of the conflict resolution process. So also, learning to share and take turns can be hugely challenging as well. And anyone with a 2-year-old will understand exactly what I'm talking about there, because it's that whole, this is why we talk about having delayed gratification, teaching children to be patient, and that it's okay to not have something right this minute just because they've asked for it, because these are all dispositions that children can learn that makes it easier for them to share. And games that allow them to take turns is a great way to do that. In developing these skills, that our children are developing lifelong dispositions for future learning and success. And some of them are things like patience, resilience, using their imagination and creativity to come up with solutions to what can appear like unsurmountable problems sometimes. You know, that persisting through difficulty is really, it is worth the effort, because you will come out with a solution at the other end. They don't learn this from one interaction, and this is why play-based learning is so good and so important. They learn this through practice, much practice over sustained periods of time. And it's like building the layers of an onion. You know, it's learning it at one level, then in a different context, through a different scenario, in different situations with different people. And the only way children learn it is through practicing lots and lots and lots. So some other ways we can provide opportunities for learning this are through small world play. So where children have the opportunity to enact or reenact real life experiences, or even imaginary scenarios. It could be either, it could be both. When children have an experience, well, same for us all, there's always an emotional reaction to that experience. And sometimes, particularly for children, those emotions can feel so strong and so powerful, and they don't always know what to do with it in that moment. So, being able to reenact different scenarios and experiences helps the child to make sense of that experience in a safe way. They can make sense of it when that strong emotion is not so present, or when that perceived threat is not present to them. So by playing it out in many different ways, they make sense of it, and that then gives them the knowledge and understanding they need to cope better next time in that experience. And I'm sure you could think of many experiences yourself where, it's been, you can't really think properly because you're so highly stressed, or you had a panicked situation where you couldn't really make the right decision in that moment and things didn't make sense to you. It's from reflecting on that experience that the learning comes. And this is the opportunity that experiences like small world play can offer children as well. And in a similar way, role play. So if we offer, role play is such an easy experience to provide for children. Provide things from around the home. You can provide, things from the kitchen cupboards for them to play with for a while, and just leave them, let them decide what they're going to do with these tools or utensils. And you'll see that for most children will actually start to engage with those utensils in a way that they're pretending to be mum and dad or big sister, or they're putting themselves in different scenarios where they are reenacting what's happened, or pretending to be the parent, pretending to be the baby. And again, this is just helping them to make sense of their prior experiences, and it grows their understanding, their ability to empathize. If they're playing mums and dads, or one's being the baby, then that teaches empathy. It teaches them to care for other people, and it also helps them make sense of things that might have happened to them, like here, this image. Excuse me, I have allergies. This image is of children playing doctors, and so you can see that they're really engaged in that play, and it's helping them to again to make sense of a real life experience they may have had. So in doing that, then it becomes less of a threatening experience next time they have that same experience. So another one is impulse control. So teaching our children impulse control is really important. If we want them to learn to take turns, and we want them to learn patience, then we can intentionally teach impulse control through games like traffic lights. The red, if you can hold a light up, or a card, a blue or green, a red or green card, then you can say we'll play traffic lights, and children move and run around, and as soon as you hold up the right cue, they have to stop or they have to go. Freeze dance, or statues, some people call it. So putting music on, and when the music stops, they have to stand still like a statue. Simon Says used to be called Simple Simon Says when I was younger, and that is Simon Says put your hand in the air, or Simon Says touch your nose. And it teaches impulse control because they will need to wait for the cue and not be driven just by their own impulses or enthusiasm. Games that involve turn taking teach patience and teach delayed gratification, and they're games like simple card games, process cooking, where they might have to take turns with a particular utensil, board games, or having a talking stick at mat time. So everyone wants to share at once. Well, if you have the talking stick, then you can actually slow it down and teach children to wait their turn. More opportunities they get to practice this, the more competent they'll become. Teaching through stories. So when we're reading stories, you can get lots of great books and literature on stories about loss, on friendship, on moving house, on going to the dentist. You could create a whole list yourself, but also talking with children about the story and how the characters are feeling, and asking children how they're feeling, and maybe giving them expression cards to help them to identify the emotion. Similarly, as well, storytelling with puppets. Creating a story using puppets to describe certain scenarios is a great way for a child to engage in the conversation, but it's not directly relating to them. So rather than say, remember that time when you didn't want to share your toys, you might just make up a story with puppets who found it really hard to share their toys. And because it's not related to a situation or a particular child, the child you're teaching, then it's easier for them to take on the message, because they're not feeling blamed or shamed, or they don't feel they've done something wrong, because it's not about them, it's about the puppets. So that's a great way to get the message through. And remember too that our emotions are our guidance system for life. The biggest decisions we make in life are emotional decisions. So it's really, really important to spend time helping our children to identify and manage their emotions. Another way is a way to build their emotional vocabulary is, like I said, asking them how they feel, but using prompts similar to these, where you might get them to identify the expression, or you might get them to point to the one that feels like how they're feeling. There's lots of ways you can do this, and this is just one idea. So I've got that same, oh, sorry, I seem to be going backwards. So learning to control our emotions and impulses is one of the hardest and most important things we need to learn. And like learning anything, children will make mistakes. Be okay with this. Don't get stressed if your child is having lots of behavioural challenges. See it as part of learning, and see it as a fantastic opportunity to support your child by teaching them how to manage things better. And you can set themselves up, you can set them up for success by creating an environment that supports them. You know, helping a child, giving them the independence to make choices and the ability to self-regulate. You know, maybe be able to take themselves off into a quiet area, or have time alone, or have time for a cuddle if that's what they need. Make sure that the environment supports them to manage themselves as best they can. Giving them the ability to make choices for themselves is really important, because they have to manage themselves, and they can't manage themselves if they can't make choices. Ensure their physical needs are met. Remember, we've talked before about HALT. Are they hungry, angry, lonely, or tired? So if their physical needs are compromised for whatever reason, then the likelihood is they're not going to manage their emotions very well. Predictable rhythms and routines support children's emotional and social intelligence as well. And remember, we can teach strategies for calming our bodies, like 3 deep breaths, or you know, if we're feeling angry, we can stamp our feet. There's lots we can do to support children to actually calm their nervous systems. And remember to, if children don't have the vocabulary to be able to express how they're feeling or communicate that they need to stop, then give them hand gestures like stop or no, or whatever it might be, so that they can, in times of stress, they can very quickly communicate that whatever's happening, they don't want that to happen, and they need time out, wherever that might be. So you'll find ways that work for you and the children that you're looking after, but you get the idea. Very quick, short communication techniques. So, sorry, that last bit was rushed, because I do want to give some time for questions or comments. So does anybody have any questions? or thoughts on what we've talked about?
We have a comment from Olivia. Hey, hi there.
Hi, Olivier. Hi. Yes, the environment is so important, the physical and the emotional environment. So, I mean, we talked about this in our previous conversations as well, the importance of creating a good feeling environment, you know, having an environment that feels welcoming and feels safe, and think about, you know, that whole stay calm to bring calm. Think about who you are being in that space, and just keeping the energy at a really good level energetically is really, really important.
Yeah. Hi,
Thanks.
Angela.
Yes.
I have a question. Like I have 4-year-old. I'm just sometime when he play with his in his school with his other friends, probably they maybe no like destroying his work or somehow they have a conflict. But I see him saying like a friend is being mean to me, but
Yes.
I don't know how to help him, like like sometime they it's just a short time and then they can be a good friend because they can play, but I don't know what to answer him, like he's mentioning name, he's mean to me and he's a bad boy. Actually he's not a bad boy, he's a similar kind of baby. Sometimes they don't agree with each other. uh, I don't know what to say
That is
about.
a really good question. And I would make two comments to that. First one is, for him, it does feel like they're being mean, doesn't it? I mean, the child, he is interpreting that situation as the child being motivated to be mean to him. It's understandable how he would feel that way. So, two things: acknowledge his feeling. So, you know, I understand you're feeling upset because your piece of work or your tower has been knocked down and you wanted to keep that. I understand that feels really frustrating, or that I understand why that upsets you. So you're acknowledging the emotion, and that's an opportunity for you there to support him in identifying the emotions too and building his vocabulary, but also making sure you don't victimize him too. You don't want him to feel like a victim. Yes, this has happened, but you want him to develop resilience and to not feel victimized by the situation, which is kind of how he's feeling when he's saying that to you. So it might be that you say, so next time you think your friend's going to do that, you need to say stop or no, or you know, if it's already happened, then just say, well, you know, maybe he was coming to play with you and didn't know how to say, I would like to play. I mean, it's hard if I'm not in the scenario, but hopefully you get the idea that we understand how he's feeling.
Yeah.
We maybe give him some strategies to prevent it from happening in the future, but then just help him to overcome that challenging situation, because life isn't always fair, and things like this do happen. And yeah, it's a tough thing to learn, and it's a tough thing for adults as well. So imagine how it feels to children.
Yeah. Yeah. And like sometime like and another question is like sometime he asks like some he asks for something, and if he didn't, he will start crying. But
Yes.
sometime like he thinks, but it's not, he is not too crying a person, but like um, if somebody says no, he thinks like I don't want, he also like I don't want to play with him. If the things is like, for example, the last week one of his friend came to my home, and she says like there are 7 continents, and he says no, it is 8 continent, but like he is not agreeing with 7 continent. Even I said whatever how many are right one, but he is not agreeing, and he even next day he's saying it, he wanted to confirm his answer is right, but I don't know how to make him, if we can accept others answer if it is right, but he is always stubborn with his answer, even if it is wrong. I don't know how to approach the situation. I can say like she can also be right sometime, but yeah, I don't know how to approach the situation. Even others are right, he is wrong. What to say to him?
So I would use puppets or storytelling to convey that, actually, because for him, he really feels it's a bad thing to be wrong. That's the problem, and it's bothered him, which is why he's still remembering it the next day. So ways of teaching him outside of that situation, that actually it's okay to be wrong. You could make up funny stories, or you could buy children's literature that conveys that throughout the story, so that he learns in a way, when he's not caught up in the emotion, he learns that it's actually all right to have a difference of opinion. It's all right to get things wrong. Nobody's right all the time. You can model that. You can be saying things like, when you do something wrong, I got that wrong, or I made a mistake there, so that the anxiety around not being right is taken away. It'll take time, but over time he will learn that. And if it's about a difference of opinion, then again, understanding that different people have different thoughts and ideas, you can teach that through stories, or through talking about how people feel. How do you feel in this situation? How do you think they feel in this situation? So he can make sense of it, because it sounds like he's really bothered by the fact he might have been wrong in that situation. If we remove that anxiety, you'll remove that problem.
Thanks, Angela.
You might still want to be right. I want to be right all the time as well, but the fact is I'm not. So it's just something we learn in life. But
yeah, he just get upset. Sometime, like if I see like other kids' tone is like, no, my little one names now, no one, like you are saying wrong, and suddenly his face goes. Both are kids, right? I can't say like you have to low down your voice or something because he's big or something, but I feel like he suddenly changes the face when somebody else says like he's wrong. But I don't know, if you open for your knowledge, you can get, if you stop angry, and that will stop getting knowledge from others. I don't know how to teach that. Thanks. I will role play, maybe the story and role play would help.
So he can see that it's normal to be wrong. It's normal to not always be right. It's normal to make mistakes. And if he sees you doing that, and if there's no pressure on him to be right, then he'll relax more in that scenario. And he could be just a super determined little boy who, doesn't feel the pressure, and he just wants to be right, and he'll be right at any cost. Well, that's a different teaching strategy. I think, Olivia, you put here, being right or staying in a relationship. That's so true. We don't want to hold on to being right. So teaching him, giving him lots of opportunities in different social situations to, there's a thing called kindy justice, isn't there? So sometimes he will learn that that's not desirable in a play situation by the harsh critics of his peers teaching him, actually, we don't want to play if you're going to do that. And that's okay, as long as you're there supporting him through understanding why, or, that's open to conversation. So it's very hard without seeing the exact scenario, but I think you get the idea, don't you, that you want to make sure you don't victimize him, and give him strategies as well to overcome that challenge and take away any pressure he's feeling, as much as you can. Life's hard, and learning to cope with other unreasonable or people, or understanding you being unreasonable yourself, that's all part of the learning journey, and we only learn it through experience. And there's a great comment here, maybe off topic. How would you differentiate from, say, angry or sad? It's weird to say, but I've never seen my son angry, which seems impossible. That's the thing. Some people, I had 3 sons, and one of them was fairly quick to anger, and one of them never appeared to show anger because he managed it in a very different way. They were totally different temperaments. So some people are more visually expressive in their anger, but all of us feel angry at some time, but we communicate it differently. So I think sad, if we're explaining to children about emotions, a good way to do it is, where do you feel the emotion? Do you feel it in your heart? Do you feel it in your throat? Or do you feel it in your tummy? Now, anxiety is felt and nervousness is felt in the tummy. Sadness is often felt in the heart, or you might get a lump in your throat if you're feeling sad and you need to express something. So think about the location of the feeling in the body, and that'll help then to be able to identify the emotion. And talking about it too, talking about finding healthy ways to express anger. What is anger? So actually teach it through stories again. What is anger? What does it feel like? When do I feel angry? And if your son has never seen to express it through conversations and stories, he might share, yeah, I felt angry when this happened to me, or you can talk about when you felt angry as well. I felt angry in this situation and I felt like I wanted to stamp my feet, or I felt like I wanted to scream and shout. So it's just, I think as a society, we need to be talking more about our emotions, and, for that to be part of the school curriculum, not just in preschool, where for most preschool settings it is, but throughout school, because every important decision is an emotional decision, and every experience is an emotional experience. So why are we not talking about it a lot more than we do? I think we'd have much less in the way of mental health problems if we did. So it's really great to see you all on this call as we're having a conversation about this, because that tells me we're all going in the right direction and there's hope for the future. And what separates us from robots? It's our humanity, and it's our empathy, and the fact that we're emotional beings. So it's definitely a skill for the future. We're all with blood and flesh, absolutely. All right, so I hope those answers have been helpful. Has anyone got any more questions before we jump off? We have gone over time, but I'm happy if there's any more questions. If not, I shall see you on the next webinar. Okay, are we all good?
I think we are all good. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining. And I hope you had fun in this session. See you in the next month's webinar.
See you soon. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks. Have a great night. Bye-bye.